I am James Ezimoha. Welcome to Africa News, where we bring you the latest updates from across the African continent. Let's dive in. Heightened tensions have Uganda sending more troops to eastern Congo. Boat services resume between Goma and Bukavu after months of suspension due to conflict. South Africa raises concerns about US aid cuts and its impact on farmers. We begin in Uganda, where troops have been deployed in eastern Congo. This is as battles intensify between the Congolese forces and M23 rebels. Positioning forces in Bunia, the capital of Ituri province, comes after a request from Kinshasa to increase military assistance. Isabel Nakia has more from Kampala.
The arrival of Ugandan troops in Bunia follows rising insecurity in Ituri province. Several militia groups have destabilized the eastern DRC, causing thousands of people to flee. The joint operation of the Ugandan army and the Congolese forces is aimed at restoring stability and ending insurgency in the wake of M23 capture of major towns in eastern DRC. Bunia is an important economic hub in Ituri province, and the joint military operation to secure urban centers is intended to boost security in eastern DRC. The deployment comes as Congolese forces are facing a challenge pushing the rebels back as rebels take over major towns after Bukavu and Goma. It's expected that security operations will intensify with Ugandan troops stationed in Bunia. Over 100 armed groups are fighting to control the mineral-rich nation, but the M23 have recently shown ability to make rapid gains. Kinshasa is demanding the Rwandan-backed M23 to withdraw their forces, but Rwanda has continually denied any involvement. Isabel Nakiria for A News in Kampala.
Passenger boat services between Goma and Bukavu resumed after months of suspension due to conflict. The move restores the crucial transport link for residents and businesses in eastern Congo.
Passenger boats are sailing once again between Goma and Bukavu, bringing relief to thousands who depend on this route for travel and trade. The M23 rebels, who seized Goma last month, authorized the resumption of services after entering Bukavu city center on Sunday, reports say. The first vessel from Bukavu was met with applause in Goma as passengers disembarked, many returning home after being displaced by the fighting. For residents, the reopening of this route offers hope.
I feel very happy because it's been a long time. Many people have suffered due to the lack of transport between Goma and Bukavu. We missed connecting these two cities through our activities. But with time, and now that the boats are starting to sail, everything will be fine.
I feel very good because my little sister died, but she wasn't buried since the whole family have been in Bukavu. When we learnt that the boat service is restarting, we all decided to come back. We thank God for that.
Despite delays and reduced passenger turnout, the journey went smoothly, according to the captain of the boat.
Usually we depart at 7:30 a.m., but today we left at 9 a.m., which is why we arrived a little late. However, the journey went well. We encountered no problems or difficulties. Typically, we transport more than 500 people per trip, but today, since it was the first trip, we only had 120 passengers.
The reopening of boat services marks a crucial step in reconnecting families and reviving economic activity. But with conflicts still ongoing, uncertainty remains over how long stability will last.
The U.S. decision to cut aid to South Africa over its land reform policies raises concerns that a key trade deal may also be in jeopardy. Losing access to the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act could hurt the very farmers the U.S. wants to protect.
Under the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, South Africa enjoys tariff-free quotas on key agricultural exports to the U.S., including wine, citrus and soybeans. The deal accounts for about a quarter of South Africa's $15 billion annual trade with the U.S., far outweighing the $440 million in aid cut by President Donald Trump. While South African exports to the U.S. represent only 4% of its agricultural trade, experts say they are heavily concentrated in certain sectors, making citrus, nuts and wine producers particularly vulnerable.
So South Africa's agricultural exports are well diversified. There's about 40% to the African continent, you have about 20% to the EU and the other parts of the world. But to the USA, South Africa's agricultural exports there are about only 4%. But while looking small, they are concentrated in particular commodities. Citrus, nuts, wine, grapes are some of the key products where you find that they have a greater access to the US.
With AGOA up for review in September, South Africa's government has warned that losing AGOA would not only hurt the economy, but also the very farmers Trump claims to support.
It was unwise, very unwise. It's like someone shooting himself or herself in the foot, because as I've said, 80% of farms, land and farms in South Africa are run and owned by white farmers. So if AGOA is cut, it's a cutting of white farmers.
AGOA's future remains uncertain, but for South African farmers, a trade cutoff could mean finding new markets or facing severe losses.
As Johannesburg hosts the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting, the country's foreign minister is grappling with the fact that U.S. has not answered calls to discuss President Donald Trump's decision to cut aid. Ronald Lamola says requests to talk about the U.S. administration's 90-day funding freeze are being ignored. The U.S. stopped payments for USAID as soon as Donald Trump re-entered the Oval Office. His administration accuses U.S. aid programs of being wasteful and promoting a liberal agenda. Lamola criticizes the handling of diplomatic affairs through social media and reiterates efforts to engage directly with Washington. Meantime, South Africa says it's prepared for all scenarios, including a closer relationship with China.
All our attempts through our mission in Washington to formally engage and communicate. And we don't think it's ideal that diplomatic matters can only be handled through social media. I think the platform of formal lines of communication, not verbals, formal engagements, always help to clarify issues and challenges, because South Africa's position is very clear. We still see the US as an important partner. We still think there is a need for us with them to engage in a constructive way. Obviously, we may agree on certain issues and we may not agree on certain issues, but that line of engagement and communication must remain open. But we will continue to reach out. We will not get tired. We will also have no choice but to plan for all scenarios. They are there in solidarity with us, and they stand ready to pledge support in terms of whatever trade relations and challenges that they can be able to. And we are glad that this is the same message coming out of the European Union. Canada as part of the G7 and other G7 countries. So there could be a light at the end of the tunnel.
The UN wants the international community to help raise $6 billion to address Sudan's growing humanitarian needs. Around 12 million people are facing extreme hunger due to the civil war.
A fifth of Sudan's population is displaced and suffering from severe hunger among around half of its population, and it looks set to get worse. That's according to the United Nations, who say a 2-year period of civil war has seen 12 million people displaced. The UN's urging the international community to help raise $6 billion in aid to address the escalating humanitarian crisis for this year. It's an increase of 40% from last year's request as the ongoing 22-month conflict between Sudan's army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces continues. 2 major plans aim to support 21 million people inside the country and up to 5 million refugees in neighbouring countries.
Because this is a humanitarian crisis that is truly unprecedented in its scale and gravity. And it demands a response unprecedented in scale and intent. It's a crisis that is increasingly crossing Sudan's borders, threatening to destabilize neighbors in ways that risk being felt for generations to come.
Famine conditions have already been reported in at least 5 locations across Sudan, including displacement camps in Darfur, and the situation is expected to worsen as fighting continues and essential services collapse. The UN's 2025 humanitarian plan is the largest and most ambitious response to Sudan's crisis to date, aiming to provide food, medical care and essential services to millions of people in need. However, ongoing violence and infrastructure collapse continues to threaten the stability of the region, with risks that could affect neighbouring countries for generations.
Still in Sudan, where fierce fighting continues in the capital, Khartoum, between the Sudanese Armed Forces and the paramilitary support forces, our Naba Mohideen reports more.
The Sudanese military is gaining control of new grounds in the capital Khartoum, in the twin city of Omdurman, Bahri, and also in Khartoum, the triangle capital. Since September, fierce clashes have been reported between the Sudanese army and the RSF, especially in Khartoum and northern Khartoum, Bahri. And since January 8th, the Sudanese military gained control of Wad Madani city, which is the second biggest city after Khartoum in Al Jazeera state in central Sudan. And also the military regained control of key locations in the capital, including the military headquarters and some military camps, which was besieged by the RSF for almost 2 years. As the two warring parties are confronting in the capital Khartoum, some atrocities are reported, especially from the RSF, which is allegedly targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, including hospitals, health facilities, and public markets. Just in the past 2 days, 200 civilians were reported to be killed by emergency law group in White Nile state. The paramilitary forces lost some grounds in Al Jazeera, in Darfur, and in Khartoum, so they are trying to penetrate towards White Nile state to open a new fighting front for them there, and to also to control main cities like Al Gatena and some cities in White Nile state. The humanitarian situation is reported to be deteriorating in the capital due to the confrontation between the warring parties, but people are so optimistic, and actually some civilians already packed their bags and they are returning home to Al Jazeera state in Wad Madani and also to Khartoum, feeling that the relative calm situation after the military recontrolled Bahri city and Omdurman city, but the situation is still worrying for monitors and for international community, which of course call for ending the hostilities and ending besieging main cities like Khartoum and Al-Fashir. For A News, Naba Mohideen in Port Sudan.
Well, that's all we have today on Africa News. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to A News.